Are you ready to become an escapreneur? Well, you were in the right place. Welcome to the Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast, designed by brilliant women, especially for brilliant women who want to create the life of their dreams by escaping the 9 to 5.
Good morning. Welcome to Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast, where we are helping women to grow, develop, and escape the 9 to 5 so that they can find a life that they truly love, so they can spend more time with their families and have great work-life balance. And with that, we have an amazing guest today, Miss Suzanne Brown. And I am very excited because she is a strategic marketing and business consultant and work-life balance speaker, strategist, and author. She empowers working moms to create the balance they crave with small changes that make a big impact over time. I love that. You can read her weekly blog or watch her TED Talk or read more about her books at www.mompowerment. Love that. Mompowerment.com. She lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and 2 young boys. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Totally. So let's jump right into things. I would love to hear your story. What is it that brought you to this point where you decided that you wanted to really help people with their work-life balance and their businesses? And so what's brought you to this point?
So I started in the marketing agency business, and that's kind of where I grew up after my undergrad degree, which had nothing to do with advertising or marketing agencies or communications or any of that kind of thing. And if anyone is listening who is not in this industry, you won't know that it is a grind. Like, it's tremendous grind. It is, I describe it as like on a really good week, I worked 55 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it looks very glamorous on like TV and in the movies, and
it does.
But it's a fun industry. It's very creatively driven. There's high emotion in it, but it is a grind. And so there's not a lot of work-life balance. And I kind of picked up on that super early because my colleagues who were moms didn't leave early. So it's not like they walked out of the office early and then they had to catch up. They literally didn't walk out of the office. And I remember thinking, like, do you ever see your children?
Yes.
Because we would all walk out at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And that was totally normal. And so I ended up going back to grad school because I said, I just can't keep doing this. This is awful. And I needed work-life balance. Like, I needed to kind of take it on and make some changes in my life. And so I said, I'm never going to work at a marketing agency again. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get my MBA and I'm going to make huge changes. And I did go back to a marketing agency after grad school, but I went to an agency, I went to grad school in Austin. And I was living in like New York and Chicago and Miami, which are, higher competitive areas. Like New York is literally like the center of the agency world.
Wow.
And I worked for a company right out of grad school that was not the right cultural fit. And then I moved back to an agency and I was there for 6.5 years. But the difference was there was a lot more work-life balance. I literally worked full-time role, director level position, 45 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
So
big change.
Shift. Yeah. But I really got to change how I worked. And because I was my own boss, essentially, like I was the head of my team. So I could change up how things looked and how I managed the people who worked with me. And my managers at the time, who were direct reports to the CEO, kind of gave me a little bit of free rein. So I was able to make things look a little different. Mm-hmm. But the last year that I worked there, I became a mom. And I work part-time. And I got all kinds of questions on how did you manage this? How did you convince your manager to let you do this? And at that point, I worked in a financial role at the agency. And they're like, did you submit a proposal? Did you, did you beg? Like, what exactly did you do? And I got these questions all the time. Like, total strangers would contact me who were friends of friends, and they were all moms for the most part.
Right.
About a year into it, I said, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'd had a side hustle for about 8 years at that point. And it was really based on the fact that I knew my value and I wasn't getting paid what I was valued, what I knew I should be making, but I was willing to not earn that salary because I had a lot more work-life balance. I mean, being a director level and only working 45 hours is pretty rare in a really competitive kind of industry, or really any industry, let's be honest. So I said, that's fine, but that means I need the flexibility to be able to go have a 3-hour lunch, or to maybe work remotely for a week so that I can go visit clients. And, so I negotiated, and I was very upfront about, I am going to have a side business. Mm-hmm. And my managers were fine with that. I mean, one, because I didn't take advantage. And two, I worked really hard to get my work done, to be super productive, to do everything that I needed to do and more. So they couldn't say, well, you slacked off. So, I proved that I was totally in. I just wasn't making as much money as I knew that I should be.
Right.
And then after about a year of being a mom, I kind of switched over 100% to being an entrepreneur. And I kept getting asked those questions of, how do you manage your time? How do you work part-time? How do you shut everything down at that time by 1:30 so that you can pick up your child? What does your day look like? How do you structure things? I kept getting the questions. And ultimately, I realized there wasn't something in the marketplace where I could point people. It wasn't like, well, here's a course, or here's the resource if you want to be a professional part-time working mom. What does that look like? Or, I mean, really, whether or not you're a parent, like, how do you work part-time and set yourself up for success? So I couldn't find those resources. So I said, well, I'll just create one. Which, as an entrepreneur, those are your famous last words. Like, how hard can it be for me to just create it? And that's how Mompowerment was born. There was really kind of a need in the marketplace. And I said, well, I'll just fill it.
Yes.
And I kept doing my strategic marketing consulting, and I just added in the work-life balance. And I love having that variety. No 2 days look the same. And so I can have some clients who have like major challenges from a marketing perspective, and then the next day I can do strategy calls with working moms who are trying to get over a specific challenge, and we brainstorm together on, what are some solutions to get you out of that rut. So no 2 days look the same, and I love that.
Absolutely. I love that story. And the reason why I love that story so much, Suzanne, is because, there was so many different golden nuggets in there. But the biggest nugget was that you saw a need and filled the need in the marketplace. And for my audience that's listening, sometimes that's exactly what it takes for you to recognize that you are the solution to a problem out in the marketplace in order to be able to serve people who really need it. Because the people that were coming to Suzanne were people that really, truly, they were hurting. Just asking the questions, they were in pain. They were like, I'm sure a lot of those women, like you said, they were walking out of the office at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, had been there since 8 in the morning. So it was like they were having these long days and a commute and not seeing their families. And that is devastating, especially for a mom, because we were made to nurture. That's what we need to do. I mean, our families are everything to us. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Well, you want them to be, right? I mean, you want to be the mom that you want to be.
Yes.
But you also, whether or not you need to work or whether you want to work, it can vary. I mean, I personally need to work not because of the financial element, but because literally my brain would atrophy and I would be like the worst mother, wife, friend in the world. I need to engage that side of my brain. Like I have to have something outside of motherhood,
right?
Or I'm just not, I'm much better at my life when I have my goals and when I'm achieving the things that I, set before myself to say, like, this is what I'm going to work on. This is how I'm going to achieve it. Like I'm a very type A personality,
right?
And you can't necessarily really bring that to motherhood. Like it's hard to be type A in motherhood. So I need to keep achieving those goals in my own, in my professional life. But it really is, but you still want to be the mother you want to be.
Yes.
Like that doesn't go away. It's not like, okay, well, I'm going to fill everything up with my professional life. It's like, no, you want to give 100% to your family. You just have to figure out how to make that happen.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. I feel you there. Even if I did not have to work anymore, I would still want to, because I need that part of me fulfilled. And it's not just doing work that's maybe a little mindless, or even work that's for someone else. I need to fulfill my passions, and I need to figure out what my passions and purposes are that drive me and really, really work in that area. And it sounds like, Suzanne, a lot of these women that come to you with that need you to help them brainstorm ideas, that a lot of these women may be in that same position where they're actually trying to figure out, all right, I've been to college, I've been to grad school, I've been in the corporate world for X so many years, all my life almost, I feel like. What do I do now? What do I do? So what do you tell women like that?
Most of the time when women come to me and they want to do, I basically call them like strategy sessions, right? We're doing strategy sessions specifically about an element of work-life balance in your life. Most of the time, it's not huge changes. Most of the time, it's a series of small shifts that you make that actually have a huge impact over time. Because we can't just check out of the office, right? We can't just say, like, I'm going to work remotely from now on. Like, most of the time you have to have a discussion with somebody to make things like that happen.
Right.
So there might be an element of that, but a lot of the time it really is just making small shifts. It might be, you need to think about literally how you spend your time differently, because so many of us respond to the day like as it comes at us.
Right.
So, okay, I need to work on this PowerPoint for work. Okay, I'm going to work on it. Oh, let me answer that phone because the phone rang. Oh, somebody stops by my office, and so let me chat with them. Oh, okay, and I got this email, and I can see, because so many of us still keep up the pop-up on your email.
Yes.
So you can see like the first few lines.
Mm-hmm.
And like I tell people, you have to manage your day. You don't respond to the things that come at you and truly be productive and efficient with your time. You have to intentionally turn things around in order to be intentional with your time. That is something that you have to make the change. And if you say yes to all of those meetings that are on your calendar, well, then you have to take work home, or you have to stay late to do the work. So you have to set the time on your calendar to say, I am going to work from 9 to 11, and I'm going to work on these documents. What I actually suggest is that you figure out when your peak productivity is, Because like for me, my peak productivity is in the morning. I've dropped off my boys to school, and that is when I truly hit my groove. But for some people, it might be after their second cup of coffee, or in the afternoon after lunch, when like they've kind of chewed on things for a few hours. You know, like it varies from person to person.
Yes.
But that's when you want to be working. That's when you want to have the time, when you're hitting your hardest challenge, or you're as you're building your business. Maybe that's when you do your business building activities, when you're like at your peak, because that's when it's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And most people don't think about their day that way. Most people simply just react. And literally it's from the morning, like from the very beginning, when you wake up and the first thing you do is you pick up your phone. But that means you're not starting the day on your terms. You're starting the day on your clients, your bosses, your, something from your child's school or whatever else. Like, you're not starting the day on your terms. So you're basically playing catch up all day. And that doesn't make you the most efficient with your time. So, you've got to turn it around and really kind of own it and become intentional with the way you want to spend your day, and block off the time and understand, like, how do you work the best? And start to kind of break that down. And I think that's especially the case as you're trying to create a business, because this might be your side hustle for a little while, as you're trying to have something, as you're trying to build something else, so that you're no longer in the 9 to 5. And you have to be incredibly efficient during your workday so that you have more time to build what you need to build on the weekends and in the evening, or maybe even in the early morning. So
absolutely. I love that. So true. I can attest to that, Suzanne. I'd be like one of your experiment cases. As long as I get up in the morning and do not touch my phone, or do not sit in the front of my computer, I can, I have this little morning ritual that I go through, and I can do it just fine and kind of like center myself for the day, prepare myself for the day, as long as I don't touch my phone or check email on my computer. Once I do those two things, it's all over. I go down this rabbit hole. Things are popping up everywhere. It's like, yes.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, it's really helpful to define emergencies, because one person's emergency isn't necessarily your emergency. So someone who says, I have to speak to you tonight, it's like, do you really? Like,
yeah.
We can talk about this tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
We're good. But so many times you get that email, whether it's from a client or a manager or somebody on your team, or someone who is working for you, and it's like, I don't really need to deal with this right now. Like, let this be my time.
I agree.
But we don't, how often do you do that? Almost never. But it's helpful to do that at work and at home, so that you don't have your child calling or texting or, whatever the case is, of like, I don't have, and it's like, you don't need that. I have this covered. You're like, we're good. Don't worry about it. But being able to say, here's the plan for later today. You have a soccer game. It's at 6 p.m. It's at 7 p.m. I will come, pick you up from wherever at 6 p.m. I have everything in my car. Like, just laying that out so that your child's not like, I don't have my uniform. We have to get home. It's like, relax. I got this covered.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And, busy moms, I mean, I read, I was doing a book review on a book by Marcus Buckingham, an old book. I can't remember the name of it now. It's about finding your strongest life, really. And so one of the things in the research back in that book, when it was written in 2009, it really shocked me, and this stood out. it was a high percentage, like 56% of women whose spouse made $100,000 or more per year wanted to work. These women didn't have to work, but they wanted to work.
Yeah.
And that was a real eye-opener for me. I was like, wow. And it was because, and I'm sure, that is just driven off of something internal. It doesn't have to do, it's not tied to the finances. So that was an amazing eye-opener for me. So even from 2009, which this book was great. I had read it before a long time ago and was just rereading it again in the book review. And it was talking about how we've come so far and we've done so many things and accomplished so many things. But because we are so much busier and we are so much stressed, we are not as happy as we thought we would be.
I can totally understand that. It is, we just keep layering it on, but we don't take anything off.
Yeah.
Which is interesting though, because there are things that you could take off. There are, like, every major grocery chain in the US has either a delivery service or some kind of shopping service. Like you pay a little bit more and somebody shops for you. But I mean, who cares? You pay $10 for somebody to shop for you and it's done. All you have to do is show up and they stick it in your car. Like, for some of these, you don't even walk out of your car. You literally just show up and somebody comes out and they're like, here are your groceries. So we just keep layering things on top of that and nothing comes off.
Yeah, you're right.
But I will say, in the spring, early this year, my husband and I had a conversation and I said, I need you to take something else off my plate. And we had agreed that he would do the cooking. And his kitchen skills are like 2 thumbs up. Like, he's basically the reason why we survived when we had a newborn and then when we had a newborn the second time. But I cooked. After the newborn stage is over, he's like, here you go. Here's your, here's the kitchen set again. But I said to him, I need you to take this back on. And he's like, okay, great. But I was doing the meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the grocery shopping and I was doing the meal prep. So literally all he had to do was show up and cook a meal. But I was doing all the heavy lifting.
Right.
And so I sat him down. So we had made that change in like January. So I sat him down in like April and I said, here's the deal. You own this now.
The entire thing, huh?
You need to plan the meal for the week. Like, you need to know what you are cooking for the week. You need to do some kind of prep over the weekend. And you can make the grocery list and I can do the shopping, or you need to just go ahead and do the grocery shopping.
Oh, wow.
And actually prep the meal and cook it. This is your responsibility. Like, here you go, babe.
And what did he think about that?
It is definitely not the way he thinks about cooking, because he doesn't think about like planning for the whole week. So every week I kind of have to sit down with him and say, okay, so, like his manager. So what is your meal plan for the week? Okay. Oh, okay. But if you want that, don't forget, you need to put this on your list. Like, as I look at the list.
Yes.
But even when you hand off a task, you don't only want to hand off a task. You want to hand off the responsibility.
Yes.
Behind it. And I think for so many of us, we just hand off like, here's this, here's that, but we don't hand off all the other stuff so that like the mental load is gone too.
Yes, good point.
So it's like, oh, I'm going to manage you while you do that. And to some extent,
No.
I have input on meals for the week, because my husband can say, well, we're going to eat this. And I'm like, the boys don't eat that. Like, that you can say we're going to eat this, but we're going to have a battle for those 2 days that you think that we're going to eat that. And I have no problem with that, but you need to have a plan B for the boys.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we can make them have a few bites of that, but ultimately we need to feed them something that will actually like provide sustenance for those 2 meals.
Right.
So I do have input, but he cooks things differently than I do. His go-to meals are different than my go-to meals. And I either need to be super specific and say, this is what I need you to do this week with meals X, Y, and Z, or I need to be okay with it not looking the way that I think it should look.
Right. I got it.
And as a type A person who is pretty particular, I will admit that about myself. Like, that was a huge, that's still something I struggle with, where it's like, what seasoning did you use for this? And it's like, but you know what? It's cooked. It's generally tasty. There's just some nuances that I'm like, okay. Let me remember this for the next time he suggests this. But I had to just let go.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to own this. I'm like, not my job. Like, this is your household duty.
That's nice. That's nice.
But even, for like our kids, that makes a difference because their palate is different. It's not only about what mom cooks. It's like, okay, so daddy brings new flavors into the mix. But they're still healthy meals. They're still tasty. It doesn't make things so consistent, right? And it's good to have variety. Like, I think that's a great thing. Our moms definitely struggle. Some weeks where they're like, this is terrible, and I'm like, guys, it's really not that bad. Like, maybe we'll add soy sauce or what, like whatever, like we'll add something to take away some of the variety of flavoring. But I don't want to own it again. Like, I have too much. So I had to let go.
Yeah.
But I'm still practicing on the letting go.
Yeah. And that's an awesome point you make, Suzanne. Especially a lot of professional business women, either were type A to begin with, or they migrated into being a type A after working in corporate for so long and having to deal with so many different types of personalities. And so letting go, and I'm type A as well, so I can attest to that. Letting go is a huge, huge thing. It's a huge piece of work-life balance, balancing, especially in your life and in the people the relationships you have. Letting go is huge, and I've had to learn that over the years as well. So it's been quite interesting, indeed. Yes.
Have you figured out, like, does something help you let go?
When I sit back and look at the situation, it's me having this out-of-body experience kind of, and looking outside of the bigger situation, then I can really kind of see where it's not that big a deal and I need to let it go.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's me doing that. My daughter, she actually kind of helped me walk along this path. And so my daughter, she likes to say, all right, what are we talking about here? Especially if it's something that's happened, like it happened in the past or it's already happened. And, and I'm beating that horse to death. She's like, it's already happened. What are we talking about here?
But that's a good point.
Yeah. And that is just something that's kind of stuck with me. It's like, should I still be talking about this? It's happened already. Shouldn't I be either finding solutions or letting it go or just moving on? Or
yeah. I like that.
Yeah. That's been pretty interesting. Yeah. So, so Suzanne, tell us about your book. You have a second book coming out later this month.
Yep.
Well, later, by the time we do this podcast, by the time this podcast air, the book will already be out.
Okay.
Yes. And so tell us about it. And I'm going to tell you right now, when the book goes live, I'm going to rerun your podcast. And I'm going to give away a free copy I'm going to buy a copy and give it away free. Go ahead. Tell us about your book for Work-Life Balance.
So my second book is, it's called The Mompowerment Guide to Work-Life Balance, Insights from Working Moms on Balancing Career and Family. And so for the first and second book, so I did research at the same time, I interviewed more than 110 professional working moms.
Nice.
And there was about 62% work for an employer, and about 38% are entrepreneurs. So I have a mix of both, people who work for a business and then people who have a business. And it's all about tips and tricks and advice and insights and hacks on really just being more efficient with your time. And the idea is that you can be more efficient with the stuff you must do, then you have more time to do the stuff that you want to do.
Yeah.
Which for working moms, hands down, is spending more time with their family.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be anything. I mean, it can be the chance to volunteer at your child's school, or to, be the den mother for the Cub Scouts, or it can be to be involved in their lives when they're, in the challenging tween and teen years. It can be showing up to all the practices at the end of the day, or being able to go to more performance. I mean, it can be anything, right? Like it can simply be like being around more at home. Like it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just being able to make all of the other stuff happen more easily. And so the book covers a lot of different things. But like there's an entire section that's on like tools and how do you change your productivity. There's stuff in there on dealing with mommy guilt and adding in more self-care to your day.
Nice.
There's things on how do you, we talk about work-life balance, and and most of the time when we're talking about that, it's like, how can I be more efficient at work so that I can get more of the life part, right? But we don't necessarily often talk about what can you do at work, whether you're still in the corporate world or whether you're an entrepreneur. Like, what can we do on that side to become more efficient with our approach to work in general? And you might talk about productivity or time management, things like that, but I also talk about things like the importance of mentors and sponsors. Because having somebody in your corner who can help open your doors, like a sponsor can, and can advocate for you and can help you keep your career moving along, that's going to make your time more efficient, because you're not fighting for those things. Somebody is fighting for them for you, right? But we don't necessarily think about somebody like a sponsor or someone like a mentor who can really kind of provide that guidance as someone who can help us with work-life balance. You don't think about that person as part of your formula. But they are incredibly important. And just your network in general, it is unbelievable how your network can help you to, whether it's finding more clients or whether it's finding a different role that is not 55 hours a week on a good week.
Nice.
So we don't necessarily think about those things when we think about work-life balance. So I try to bring them all together and have a more holistic approach, instead of only, it's only about productivity. There's so much more to it.
Nice. So, very nice. I hope you don't mind when the book comes out if I do a book review of it on my Facebook Lives. I love doing book reviews. So
I would love that. I would love it.
I would love to do because it sounds like an all-encompassing guide to kind of help you navigate that and get some really good tips and advice and just a different perspective on how you balance things, or how you, if you're looking for ways to balance things, how to do that.
Yeah. And for me, honestly, I read a ton, but I hate walking away from a book and thinking, how am I supposed to use that?
Right.
Like, what exactly am I supposed to do with that now?
Me too.
And so this is a very practical guide. Like literally, you'll be able to walk away with tips that you can start using like tomorrow. You know, and some of them you can use as is, and some you might need to massage a little bit for your specific situation. But the idea is that you can literally start using things the following day or that same day, because that is what we need as working moms. We need, and honestly, just as working women, right? Like,
yep.
We need to be able to figure out, like, what are some of the small things that I can move and I can make happen, so that, you know, over time, it's just, I get this huge impact, but I haven't like completely changed everything that I do in my life. It's like, some people can certainly use those kinds of moments, but for the most part, we just need those like practical little nuggets. So I would love to have you spread the word and get other moms talking to other moms about like, oh my gosh, I learned this tip. It's amazing. Like, let me tell you how it worked, you know?
Love it. Okay. That's what I'm doing it.
I love that. I love that. Because I think that that's one of the things that is incredibly helpful from a what can we do with other women kind of perspective. You know, hopefully most of the people listening to this podcast have a tribe. You know, but how many times do you really kind of sit down with your tribe and say, I am struggling with this, and I just need some understanding of like, what do you do to not have this be a struggle for you? You know, and you might do that professionally, but you might not do that at home. Or you might be asking for things for like related to your kids, but you're not asking about like, how did you find your sponsor? You know, we're not necessarily like peeling back and asking for, how do you overcome the challenges? Because I want to be able to overcome that challenge quicker.
Right. Very nice. I love that. So now you have a free gift related to that. It's called the Guide to Your Why. Am I correct?
It's the Know Your Why guide.
Know Your Why guide. Okay.
Yes.
And that one, I will definitely put the information up about that one on my page dedicated to Suzanne. And I'll put all the links there. But tell us about it, Suzanne.
So what I figured out as I did these interviews with all of these women is it was a lot easier for them to make changes when they understood why they wanted to make changes. Because it's very easy to jump to the solutions, but those might not be the right solutions for your situation. You know? And so it might not be that you need to become an entrepreneur. It might be that you need to work from home. You know, that might ultimately be your solution. But if you don't sit down and actually dig deeper and understand, like, why am I trying to make this change? What do I want it to look like? Who can actually help me? Like all of those pieces, and really kind of do a little bit of the inner work, then it's really hard to find a solution and to find one that sticks, right? With it, because it's also hard to totally shift direction. Like once you've started momentum down one path, even though it might not be the right path, you keep going down that path because you've already started, right? It's hard to totally shift direction and say, oh, maybe that was not right. So this helps you dig into like, why do we even want the change? Like, what is that really all about? And then that way, that can be your, your compass of like, okay, based on the decision that I have in front of me, does that still keep me going towards my why? Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, I don't need to do that. You know, because things might appear to be solutions for what you need, but ultimately they don't actually help you deal with the real underlying problem.
Makes sense. Yes. So ladies, definitely pick that up on her website, mompowerment.com/motivation. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. And definitely pick it up there. Now, Suzanne, just so my audience can get to know you a little bit better, because I do want them to reach out and utilize your services, because I think you have a lot to offer to moms, because I think there's a movement going on, and I think we're in a place where we actually need this. So you talked about living in 5 countries outside the U.S. and 5 cities in the U.S. over the years.
I have.
Travel.
You know, I am an avid international traveler. I had a goal, remember goal-oriented, of visiting 40 countries before I turned 40.
Oh, wow.
And I hit that goal. I'm over 40, but we don't need to get into that. But yes, so I lived in 3 countries in the Middle East. My dad worked in the Middle East for about 20 years.
Oh, nice.
And then I also lived in the UK, and I lived in Mexico.
Oh.
And then in the US, I grew up in San Antonio. I lived in New York, Miami, Chicago, and now I live in Austin. So apparently 5 is like my magic number of like,
yes, it is.
Although we'll see. My husband and I, he loves his job and what he does. He has to be physically here in Austin. So we can't move for him to continue to do it. And honestly, he truly loves what he does. And I would not want that to change.
Mm-hmm.
But the agreement we made was that since he gets to pretty much decide where we live while we're working, I get to decide where we live when we retire.
Oh, nice.
So I said to him, if you mess with me and you make things really challenging for the time we have to live in Austin, I'm not necessarily going to guarantee that you can communicate with people wherever we live, like in retirement, because I do speak another language. And he's like, I love you, sweetie. Yeah. So we might end up living in a 6th country or in a 6th city, but
nice.
That's a ways off. So
nice, very nice. And also, you talked about a quote: "Everything is a baby step to something else." You said one of your MBA professors told you that once. Tell me about it.
So, being a type A personality, and honestly, for that matter, being an MBA, you're really used to big steps, big, bold things that make huge advances to whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I had been a TA for her while I was in grad school. And, she was talking about everything that you do is a baby step towards something else. And, she's like, having several small baby steps still gets you where you need to be. You're still moving in the right direction. And a lot of times that's what you need. You need to be able to build that forward momentum, even though you're not making those huge strides that you think you are. But don't think that you're not making strides. It just looks a little different than you think it should. And that, for me, was a really helpful thing, because I realized she's absolutely right. Like, building that momentum can actually kind of quicken the pace as you keep going down that path, versus like trying to build that momentum on your own to make that first big step, right? Like, that can actually be really challenging from a business perspective, especially as an entrepreneur. So it was very eye-opening. And granted that, that's her experience. She, not only is she a professor in an MBA program, but she also, she had been in the real world working on huge pieces of business for, a really, really long time. So she was speaking from like her own professional experience and from a theoretical perspective. So it was just so helpful, especially at that moment, because it was soon after I had graduated. And she's like, hold on a second here. Like, if you think that you have to make that next big step, you're wrong. And I have lived by that since then.
Very nice. I love it.
So,
Well,
good
Suzanne,
little reminder.
yeah, absolutely. Suzanne, we're about to wrap things up. Audience, please reach out to Suzanne. Look forward to the contest because I am giving away a book. And also, you can find Suzanne at mompowerment.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Yes, I'm trying to be better about Instagram. Instagram is hard. Like, my whole thing is to be intentional and to be present.
Right.
So it's really hard for me to say, oh, wait, let me take a picture. It's like, that's not, like, I'm so busy being in the moment with my kids that I don't think like, oh, this would be a really good picture to take. It's so I'm trying to be better about actually taking a picture of the moment too, not just living it.
Just living it, right?
Well, and it's also, it's a good reminder. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, do you remember when we did this? And so I am trying to be better about that balance without taking away from the being in the moment.
Right.
Side of it. And honestly, our boys love to see pictures of themselves. So you're like, let me see what I look like. And it's like, wow, okay.
That's nice. Very nice.
So it's very cute. And they, they'll kind of go through the pictures on my phone and they're like, oh, and I remember. So it's good. It is good. I have realized that it's good to have those little moments that they can relive over and over again. And so I'm trying to be better about that.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne, for coming and hanging out with us. I really, really appreciate it. I want to ask you one final question. I just want you to share from your heart something with my audience, one tip, one action item, something they can do today to make a difference in their work-life balance moving forward.
So my tip is that you should not only look at today. So I think it's really helpful when it comes to work-life balance to actually think about the long term. Because truthfully, if you look at a day-by-day basis at work-life balance, you will fail literally almost every day. Because it is incredibly hard on a day-to-day basis to think about this balance, whatever that is. It does not have to be a 50-50 split, but it's really hard to do that. So if you look at your week, your month, your 6 months, a year, it's much more achievable, and it kind of releases that pressure. It takes away some of the mom guilt. Like, it's that permission, because there will be some seasons that are incredibly busy at work and you can't get out of those. And that doesn't mean that you don't have work-life balance. It just means that you're more work focused for this month. That hasn't actually taken away from your work-life balance if you think about what your 6 months look like.
Right.
Or it might be that during the week you work super hard so that you have 100% of your time dedicated to your family Saturday and Sunday. And you literally don't look at your computer. You don't deal with emails. You don't answer text messages, like literally nothing on the weekend, because that is 100%, kid and significant other focused.
Gotcha.
But that way it's like, okay, so you have to work super hard Monday through Friday. You know what? Saturday and Sunday are like the richest, most amazing time. And your kids aren't going to say, I didn't see you Monday through Friday. They're going to say, that was so much fun this weekend. That's what they're going to think about. It's not going to be, well, why didn't I get to do that, Monday and Tuesday? And it's like, no. If you ask them about last year, they're not going to say, well, I remember that we didn't get to do that. They're going to be like, I remember when we did this. And when we went on that hike, that was such a fun hike. That's just not necessarily how their brains work. So it's like, don't let that be how your brain works. Just think about it long term, and it will shift how you look at work-life balance.
Very nice. I like that. Yeah. Thank you. so much, Suzanne. This has been wonderful. I'm sure that my audience will get a ton of good tips and insights and changes in perspective. You've done that for me a little here, so I appreciate that. And so definitely reach out to Suzanne if you need her help. Don't be shy. She'll be happy to help you. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast, where we are helping women to actually change their lives. And so like, subscribe, comment on the podcast, definitely download it, and we will catch you on the next episode. Bye.